All right, welcome back to the course. Now we've covered a lot of this hardware devices and programming these hardware devices from these various IDEs. In this next section and the coming sections, we're pretty much going to focus on strictly the software portion of AWS IoT. These are all the different functionalities that Amazon allows us to do through the AWS IoT control panel, which is like their pre-made Lambda functions. So we've already played around with the monitor, we've done the management, we've done security, we've done testing, and we've done settings. We'll get to the rest of this throughout the course, but the most common thing we're going to do throughout the rest of this course is create these various actions, again, which are these predefined Lambda functions that we're going to configure for our embedded devices for IoT. So let's go ahead over here into actions. Now you can see these are some previous actions I created. Some are more useful than others, but for this, let's do a new action. So I'm going to go ahead and create it, and we have this card or list format. You can change it to whichever one is more visually appealing to you. I like the cards a little bit better. For this action we're going to create, we're going to get a text or an email from our embedded device, and then we'll add some contingencies. Say if the temperature or humidity reaches a certain limit, like we have a growing plant farm or operation where we really care what the temperature or humidity is, then we can get an email or text notification based on that. So that's the kind of action we want to create. Let's start with the text because that's a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this create, and I'll call this my text. And what we're going to do, get a text when we send sensor data up. Okay, we're just going to get a text when we send sensor data up to the AWS IoT cloud. We have a couple of different versions of SQL. We can use their version of SQL. We're just going to use the latest, which is that. For how these rules work throughout the rest of the course on query statements, is it similar to MySQL, Postgre, whatever you've used before. Amazon set it up so it works very similar. It's not super intuitive, but once you get the hang of it, it's very easy to use. So what we want to do first is attribute is what data from your topic do you want to get. I'm going to take all data, which is just the wildcard. I don't have to specify specific data. I want the whole JSON package. Topic filter is what we send our published topic from our device. So for this one, I'm using the 8266 in Mongoose. But you can be using the ESP32 in Xerith and it would work just as well. So I just want to make sure I copy that and get everything exactly right. If I misspell that or whatever, it's not going to understand my topic. So I'm selecting this whole package from this specific topic. Published from the device, subscribed to by Amazon AWS. All right, we don't need a condition, so let's go ahead and add that action. We'll probably add a condition later. Now here's the panel you're going to become familiar with. It's all these different actions we can have, as well as the newest one, which is this IoT Analytics channel. By the time you have this lecture, there's a very good chance you'll have that on your control panel. If not, don't worry, it's coming, and I'll go over that in this course as well. And for this part of the course, we're going to do the very easiest thing possible out of all these options, send a message via SNS. So we'll choose this option, go down here and configure it. So we have to configure a policy and a role. So the first thing we want to do is choose an SNS target. I'll walk you through how to do that. So instead of all these ones that I've already have done, I'm going to just create a new resource and create a new topic. I don't want to use a previous topic. So this is going to be my text topic. And for my text topic, it can display any information. I'll just say display, and you can do whatever you want. I think it allows you up to 10 characters on that. Okay, now that I got my test topic, let's edit it and see what we can do with it. Actually, I got to refresh this because it didn't show up. And you can refresh it over here, or you can refresh your browser. Either way, it'll show up at that point. And there it is, my text topic. And what kind of actions we're going to do with that? We're going to subscribe to a topic. And the topic we want is going to be our email. So we don't need to worry about the ARN for this. You may want to save that for playing around with later. This one, I just want to get an SMS message, and I'm going to stick in the endpoint, which in this case is my phone number. For you, it's going to be your phone number. So I'll blur this out because I don't want you guys calling me incessantly in the middle of the night asking me questions. No, I'm sure you wouldn't do that. But I'll give you my email in the next section so you won't feel neglected. All right, great. We have that all created, and that's good to go. So now we can refresh this and see it's been updated. And let's go back over here. And now we can update this and choose our new topic, my text topic. There, that's the one we just created. Now we have the option of getting in RAW or JSON format, or you can leave it blank and it'll default to RAW. We'll just stick with RAW. Now the next thing and last thing we have to do is make an IAM role. Now throughout the rest of this course, we're going to be using a lot of these customized IAM roles, and I want to give you a little look into what they look like rather than just create one, show you it works, and move on. So I'm going to create a new role, and I'm going to call this my text role, and I'll put an arbitrary number since I think I have other ones. I'll call it 112. Create a new role. All right, and I'm going to update the role. Actually, I'd have to choose the role before I update it. So let's update that. Choose the role. There it is, my text role. Update the role for our topic. Successfully updated role. Add action. All right, good. We're pretty much ready to go. Now, this is our rule we've already configured with the SNS push. Let's create this rule. And there we have it. So I'm going to also refresh this screen. And the reason I'm going to refresh this is because right now you don't have that enable disable box. It's enabled, but it's not showing enabled. So I want to show it as enabled. So let's go back here and it should be enabled. All right, we're good to go. But I did want to show you one thing first. So what I want to do is go back here to AWS, open a new panel, and again, go into that IAM role. So let's look at that role we just created. So I'll go here to IAM. And you remember what the role was called? My text role 112, I think. I have a bunch of roles, so it's good to keep note of what they are. But I want to show you how this IAM works on the left-hand side here, because if you don't understand this, you're going to struggle throughout the course when things don't work. So let's look at what our policy is. So I expanded this to check out our policy. And from here, we're allowed to publish. That's all we're allowed to do. We can add additional actions and resources as needed by just editing policies and then adding rules. We're going to be doing that later in the course, but for this is fine. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. Let's go back to AWS and let's go over to test it and see that we actually, now that we have that action enabled, let's make sure we can do that. Again, that's what we're subscribing to. I'm going to push the flash button, again, button 0 on our device for the ESP82.6 or the ESP32. There's our payload. If you configured this correctly, you should have a text message. If not, there might have been a mistake and you should re-watch the video. So let's go on to the next lecture. In the next lecture, we want to do the same thing, but in the next lecture, I want to add an action for getting an email, and then we can play around with enabling one, disabling another, and adding some conditionals briefly. So I'll see you in the next lecture. Okay, welcome back to the course. Now in the last lecture, we created a text messaging through SNS services. Through this one, we're going to create an email message through SNS services. It's going to be pretty much the same method, but there's one additional step we need to make, but it shouldn't complicate things too much. So we're going to start the same way we did last time. We're going to create an action. So hit this up here, and we'll just call this my email, because we already created my text. You can put any kind of description you want. We're going to use the same SQL version, and we're going to take the whole JSON packet, everything that we did the last time, and then our topic is going to be what we've already gotten here from Mongoose. This payload package from our publish from device side is my topic get payload. So go back here. And next lecture, we'll go over conditions, so we get contingency operations depending on what the values of our payload is, whether we want a text or an email or both. For this one, we're going to leave it blank. We just want to get an email with our complete package. So go ahead and add action. And we're going to go back here like we did the last lecture with sending an SNS notification, push notification, configure action. All right, so we're going to make a new resource. So I don't want to lose my spot on this page, because right now if I go through my resource, the resource we want isn't in here. So I'm going to right click this, open a link to a new tab, and go right over to the SNS panel, and that's where I'm going to create my topic and subscribe to my email. So let's go ahead and create a topic, and we're going to call the topic name our email. For what it's going to display, that's just what it's going to display on the subject line when we get our JSON packet delivered. I'll just say display colon. Not very creative. Create that topic. All right, now that we created the topic, let's go ahead and subscribe it to email. So refresh this, and here we have our list of topics, and the one we want is our topic. That's the one we just created. So let's go ahead and subscribe that to email. So to subscribe to a topic, so we got our ARNs there. I'll select on the protocol email. Again, we can have email or text just like we did in the last lecture. Now I'll put my email here, but for you, obviously, you're going to want your email. But I'll put mine here, and this way you can email me if you have any questions. steve@embedded-iot.net. But that should also be in the course information description, so you probably don't need that there. But for this, you need your own email, not mine. And mine won't work either for the following reasons. Unlike when we did our text topic, Amazon's going to want you to confirm this on both sides, the client and the server side. So if you check your email account, you'll get an email and it'll say, hey, AWS notification, click here if this is really you wanting to subscribe to this payload topic. You say, yeah, I want to subscribe. That part's pretty obvious, but what's not obvious is you got to come back here to actions and confirm your subscription. So what's going to happen is you're going to get a long subscription code starting with HTTPS. Unless you do this to confirm on the server side you wanted this subscription, you're never going to get any emails. And this confused me for a while before I figured it out. And I'm going to go check my email and get my code and do that right now. Okay, so I'll enter the subscription confirmation code in this box that I received in my email. And again, this starts out with HTTPS and then a long string of alphanumeric digits. So I'll go ahead and hit confirm subscription. And then once you've done that, we'll just go back to where we were before on the action button. So now when I refresh this over here, we should have our email now available that everything's confirmed and subscribed. You can have, again, message format, leave it whatever you want. RAW or JSON, doesn't really matter. Pick whatever you prefer. You can play around with both. And then the final thing we have to do is, again, do a new IAM role for our role management. We can actually use the last role we created because that's just the SNS publish role. But again, I'll create a new role just for the hell of it. So I'll say create new role, and we can call it our email role, just like our text role, and then create it. And if you go check it out, it's going to look just like the last one because it considers it just SNS published. And then later on, if you want to add permissions, you can. So I'll choose this our email role, update role, get that green box, and add the action. And then I'm going to finish this up by saying create rule. And there we go, our email. I can go and it's enabled right now. So when we send the next text package through our test channel here, we'll get the message and you'll get the email. So go around and play with that next. And then in this next lecture, we're going to use some conditionals. So we only get text or emails conditions on what the values in our JSON packet is, like temperature or humidity. So let's do that in the next lecture. For this section, we're going to do the email and the text as two separate contingencies. So this is why I spoke in the last lecture about why we may not want to include email and text as SNS notification under the same action. By separating them out into two different actions, we can enable and activate one independently of the other. So let's see what that'll look like. So let's go into my text message and we'll edit it here. So we have this conditional statement. We're getting the whole payload, and I typed in here if temperature, again, that's a random variable, or a real variable if you've installed the DHT11 or 22 sensor. If the temperature of that JSON payload package exceeds 80 degrees, then this condition is met and it'll proceed with that text notification. So we'll update this, and there, that's good to go. Go back here, and now let's go to our email message. So going to our email message up here, go to edit. And for this one, you can just type in, it's already in here, humidity is greater than 40. Remember, again, that's a random variable of 0 to 50, or if you've installed your own sensor, you can put the humidity index at anything you want. Update that there, although it was already previously updated. So now I'm going to enable both rules. Let's send it some test packages. And we'll get an email or a text contingent on what the humidity or temperature level is exceeded or met. So there, we've already exceeded our temperature, so we got a text message. There, humidity is met on that one. So we have the temperature condition met there, not there, but our humidity condition is met there. So your messages are obviously going to vary. But that's how that works. So it's good to be able to separate these temperature and humidity. Now, I will say one thing briefly before we move on to the next lecture, is when I put together my other course on the IoT for ESP8266, there's a million of these sites that are fairly much free that can do graphing and conditional reporting, just like we did here. Obviously, with AWS IoT, we're going to get into a lot more things that those websites can't offer. But if you go to ifttt UB dots, initial state, or LOCENT, they can all do graphing and this exact same type of conditional reporting. But again, Amazon has more functionality not only with this, but a lot more things that it could do. So let's move on to the next section.